Oh my God.
It's like we're making anime noises. How
can that be?
Yeah, it's that breathy thing when something happens and they're
impossible. The audience has missed our fun anime noises.
We can replicate them.
Gross.
That's what happens in every anime. It's like that's a direction that they get. Yeah. The actors are told, okay, do the anime breathy can't figure out what's happening thing.
We're gonna hold on this frame for a while of your character with his mouth agape, stunned at something he's seeing.
There's no animation to it whatsoever.
Right. Or if it's like a little kid,
They used to do that all the time on Pokemon. It was like,
on Dragon Ball Z, it's a whole thing.
It's a huge thing on DBZ. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you get people powering up, and so it's just a lot of grunting and pooping noises,
Right. It's that like whooshing sound, that sound that happens in DBZ where like a mountain gets cut in half, and then it cuts to Gohan, and he's like,
or like they're being blown backwards or something. It's like, or if it's Master Roshi. I could do the whole character bank of characters just falling backwards.
Yeah, right.
That was Yajirobe.
I don't even know who that character is, but okay.
You don't remember playing the game and John would always be Yajirobe? He's the little like fat guy with the samurai sword.
I have no idea who that is.
Okay.
Is he the pink dude?
No, he was like a regular person and he like lived on the lookout with Kami, but he just made the senzu beans. Is this making sense?
No.
Who is Kami? How dare you, Dustin? Who is Kami?
I don't know. Do I know him?
Kami was like old Piccolo. He was like the old Namek who was like who lived on like the lookout, like above the earth.
Oh yes, the Sarek to Mr. Spock. I got it.
Yeah, he was Piccolo. I see.
Oh, that's another anime staple. Is the
It's really hard to do these.
Just think of the people that have to do them day in and day out as a job.
Oh man, I saw like a video one time of like Sean Schimmel, like the guy who voices Goku, having to like scream and power up, and it was nuts. It was like and like they're fighting, and so it's him and this other actor going like and then Sean, he was just like, I will not let you destroy my world. And it was like turned into a big scream. Yeah. It cuts to like what the footage is, and he's still going. And they cut back to the booth, and like his neck veins are going insane, and it looks like he's about to pass out.
Yep,
that was crazy.
I think of like anime cliches in Pokemon, which is generally my what I go to for Pokemon, because that's my biggest frame of reference, is they would do the like echoey inner monologues of characters, which I guess probably stems from like way old school like Speed Racer. Sure. But it was like, something would happen in a battle and Ash would be like, I don't know if I can beat him. Yeah. He evolved. His Rhyhorn evolved.
I can't let him win.
Win. Yeah, it's like echoey, and the same thing would happen in Speed Racer, when it was like, oh, who is Racer X? Oh, oh. I guess Speed Racer started all of this because it was like, I don't want to lose this race, Trixie. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, it was like a mixture of amount of words versus amount of lip flaps.
Yeah,
what do we do? And sometimes you see that more in the 90s animation, like with Dragon Ball Z, like it was just like, he's become more powerful than I could ever imagine. Like they'd add like a tremble at the end of his voice.
Yeah,
but like,
right.
It still didn't sound right to me. It's almost like someone tickled him at the end of the sentence.
Right.
More than I can ever imagine. Who was that? Who was there? But like, I think they got better as time went on. It just like, let's just hold the frame or reverse it back to the mouth shut kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's some level of like, I don't know if this always was the case. And again, I don't know anything about anime, but I think there's some level of editing that happens now to sort of try to match the lip flap a little bit. So it's like, maybe not animating something, but like editing it. So if the English goes on too long, like there are spots where you can like reverse it back and replay it, and so there's like little things where they'll isolate a character from, the background and just kind of like retime the animation. So they're not really changing anything. They're just like retiming it. And, I think I saw a video recently, or not recently, it's been a couple years ago, that they did when they were redubbing some newer episodes of Pokemon. And it was that way. It was like, I think the new actress for Ash is Sarah Nadoshini, and she was like talking about doing the recordings and like everything's broken up, and it's like, okay, you have to say this line in X amount of frames, like, trying to match it down to the frame. And so it's also a lot of like retooling your performance to match the timing of the animation, which I feel like would be really tough.
Yeah.
Like it's tough enough sometimes to be like, just say a line like that is completely preposterous. Like, but if I use a grass type against Bulbasaur, it's like this like full on thing. But if they, it can be a lot of stuff that they're like, you have to jam this into a small amount of frames, and you just have to say it fast. And so you'll see that, like, I don't know. That was always like a Speed Racer thing too. Yeah. Like the stereotype of Speed Racer is all of those breathy and talking really fast,
super fast. Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
I think that's part of the appeal of when Funimation did the Dragon Ball Z Kai was just, we're going to tighten, like we're going to take liberties with the script. We're going to cut stuff out that we really don't think needs to be there. And we're going to sort of animate new stuff if we think that it is required and stuff. And of course that looks great. Yeah. I've had those on my Christmas list for like 5 years. No one's gotten them for me.
Really?
Really should just get them myself, but
well,
but yeah, I mean, I've got all kinds of stuff on that wish list, dude. I got books and all kinds of stuff, movies.
Yeah, I've got a little wish list going on, and yeah, it usually gets ignored around the holidays. And so not ignored. I mean, it'll be like, everybody will try to get like one item or whatever. And it's like, as I, throughout the years, I keep adding to them. Yeah. And so there's stuff in there from like years ago that I still haven't gotten. And then I'll go back through around Christmas, be like, this has been on my list for 4 years and I haven't gotten it. Mm-hmm. Clearly I don't actually care. I always, I would have bought it for myself. Yeah. Well, yeah. So like I tell myself that like, let me just wait past the holidays and then I'll see what actually gets gotten. And if nothing gets gotten, I'll just get something. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But it's one of those things like I would like part of why I haven't bought more physical movies is because we don't have anywhere to put them right now. And so it's like, okay, like I'll put that off. Like some of this stuff like can wait, obviously, like I don't need it right now. Sure. And the same thing with books. Like we want to get some books, but it's like we don't have bookshelves yet. And so we're not going to get bookshelves until we do such and such a thing before that. And then there's other furniture that we want to like buy when we get the bookshelf. So we don't have to make one IKEA shipment or one trip out of town. So it's like this whole thing. It's like, I can't buy books because I don't have bookshelves, because I don't have beds, because I don't have whatever. And we don't buy them because we haven't fixed the door yet or whatever. Right. It's like all this crap event, unfortunately gets kind of lumped together in this like big waiting list of expenses. And it's like, you feel guilty for like
trying to make space for like capital improvements on your house.
Sure.
Like, yeah, I need a better chair. Like, I can't give this desk to my son yet because we can't get me my new desk because we don't need it.
Right.
But
true.
like, the longer we don't do it, the longer Noah has to do his homework out on the kitchen table with no privacy.
Right.
So it's like, oh God, but a desk is like, since it's gonna be like the desk, it's like we have to like put thought. So it has to be like a certain kind of desk. Like, what do I need and what looks best in this room? And so it can't just be any old hand-me-down desk. That's the part that sucks. Like when you start to have kids and you get a house and you settle and stuff, and it's like, then it starts to kind of matter your furniture. You can't just buy random shit, you know, or accept like hand-me-down couch. You have to start like thinking about things holistically and how they, you know, work together, which is nice and it looks better. Yeah. But like, you know, I mean, I love my 2 white couches in there. They look great and they make the house look great. I did not enjoy paying for them.
Right.
But I promised my wife when we moved, we'd get new couches, and then we moved. And so we got new couches. Yep. But,
that's what you do.
That's what you do. So anyway, this desk has been hers. This was in her bedroom, like growing up. And so this became my desk when my old desk at the old house kind of like broke and got crappy. And so then we used this one. So I've had this one for years, but it's small and it doesn't match what we're going for in this room. And our son needs a desk for which to do his work and stuff. Yeah. His room doesn't have that much furniture in it.
Yep.
And so that's like the issue we have right now is like we don't have that much furniture for some of these kids because just not essential. But time zero marches on, and you know, got to get some furniture, do some stuff. So
it's true. It's one of those things like I've become a little obsessive about is like, I want to make sure that the furniture all
makes sense.
That it all makes sense. And like when we first moved in, we were just kind of accepting whatever people could throw at us. Yeah. Like, hey, I have a free couch. Do you want it? And it's like, yeah, sure.
Right.
And then over time, it's like, not only has our storage areas like just been overtaken by stuff that we are not actually using, but it's also just stuff that we're going to eventually have to throw away because it wasn't that great in the first place. And so for us, it's been this constant battle of like slowly upgrading all the furniture while hoping that it all makes sense when it comes together, if that makes sense. So, like each room kind of has like, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say like a color palette because we're not that serious about it. Like I don't have a Photoshop document with all the Pantones, but
sure.
Like I do have like in mind, like, okay, well, this room, the furniture is like, you know, wood grain and it's like natural wood. Yeah. And in this room, everything's white or black or whatever. And, you know, just kind of stick to that because that's about as, you know, artistic as I can be in terms of interior design is just be like, they're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
you know, I know it matches because it's all the same.
Yeah. We have we have swatches push pinned to the walls of certain rooms because we asked my son what color he wanted his room to be. And so he gave it to us. And so there's like a range of those on his wall. And we've kind of picked the one we're going to do. And then hers is the same for my daughter. And then we have color for out here because this is all kind of one big area with this study is like a little alcove. It's not like an actual room. So like that all kind of has its own style and vision. So we sort of talked about what we wanted to do with the house. And at that point we started to pick out furniture and colors and stuff. So we pretty much have stuff basically ready to execute all this. The decisions have all been made. It's just a matter of, all right, when is it time to pull the trigger on purchases like this? Well, here's what sucks. Like you want to be sensible and do like the Dave Ramsey thing or whatever and go like, look, I'm not going to incur any new expenses if I don't have to. But like, if you take that ideology to the extreme, you just sort of spend 20 years like with the same table, with the same horrible table, because it still works.
Yep.
And it's like, part of me like makes myself feel guilty when I go, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not because I want new things. It's because I want things that make sense. And I don't want to spend the years of my life where I'm the healthiest, like with crappy hand-me-downs making up my house and for my kids to grow up in a house that's just full of crappy hand-me-downs.
Yep.
You know, and like,
yep.
Like we're at the stage where we don't accept furniture from my parents anymore, like because they're trying to dump all these heirlooms and stuff and, you know, downsize themselves. And it's like, you want this table? And it's like, no, like we don't need a table and we don't want that table, you know?
Right.
Like,
right.
And we don't need any more. Like we're at the part where like, we're slowly kind of getting rid of baby stuff. Like we're going to be getting rid of this rocking chair probably in the next year because we don't use it. It just sits there and collects clean laundry.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
As soon as we buy my son a bed, cause he's still in that crib, like as soon as we get him that big boy bed, that's even more reason to just get rid of that chair. Cause then it's like, what are we going to do with the dresser if there's a full blown bed in here?
Exactly.
Get rid of the thing. So it's just so, you know what I mean? Like it sucks. Like we can't just like go get the new stuff because that's like thousands of dollars and we can't just let that go if we also need to fix the AC.
Right.
But at the same time, like I could make that argument for another 10 years if I had to. And that sounds like a miserable 10 years to me.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and knowing you need to replace something and you just don't.
Yep.
Like, you know, to the petty degree, that's 10 more years, Dustin, where I can't buy any books because I don't have bookshelves because it's not time to buy extra beds yet.
Right.
And it's like, that sucks. That's stupid.
Yeah. Yep. So, agreed.
It's a big push and pull. I've done that dad thing where I repeat the same axiom to my kids. And so like I tell my daughter like once a week, I go, you know, it's like I always say. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it.
Oh no.
And I go, you know, it's like I always say, everything's a trade-off. And that's like, that's the thing I always repeat to my kids and my daughter all the time is everything's a trade-off.
Everything's a trade-off.
You could do that, but if you do that, then that means this. Like it's,
Yep.
Sure, Amelia, we could do that. But then if we do that, now we can't do this thing.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're recording on a Wednesday night. It's been a couple weeks since we've recorded because of
life
circumstances beyond our control.
Yep.
You had work.
Yep.
And then we were supposed to record last night. Last night I had my niece my 1-year-old niece. It was her birthday, so we went to my brother's house to eat, and it was a whole thing. And then my youngest child fell down the stairs at their house. We don't have stairs in this house. He's never lived in a house with stairs. We had stairs in the old house. He was born when we were here, and so he doesn't. I mean, he can walk downstairs, but he's had no practice with like a flight of stairs.
Sure.
And one of the little kids that was over there left the gate open, and they live in like an old house. And so the staircase is very steep. And we weren't even in the room. And we just heard, my wife said she heard him tumbling. He fell. We think he fell against the gate. Like that's what stopped him. And he had like a big old dent in his forehead, like right above his eye, like right at his brow.
Yeah.
And so he was just really crying and inconsolable. And, you know, Tara was like, Tara knows that if it's swelling and lumping outward, that's fine. But if it's a dent, you should get them looked at because that could imply swelling is happening inward. Yeah. So Tara, so we came in there in one car. So I left my 3 other kids at the house with my relatives. And I was just like, I'll be back in a minute. And I drove her to the hospital, which we were actually much closer to than we would have been if this were our house.
Sure.
Got the 2 of them in there and then came back and just had to sort of try to enjoy the party and just text updates and hope that they got wrapped up by the time we had to leave anyway.
Yeah.
And of course it would happen at like a shift change. So it took them forever to get seen.
Yep.
But thankfully he's fine. They did like a CT scan and all that stuff. So no fractures, no swelling, nothing. He's fine.
Good.
So that all was fine. Of course, you know, I had to take my kids home. My mom had to come over and watch them so I could drive all the way back there to go get them when they were done. Yeah. And we got home and it was like 10 o'clock and it was one of those things. And then I almost didn't make it tonight because I was trying to get all this stuff taken care of. And then like my son had homework and, you know, all this other stuff was happening. And I was like, at the beginning of the night, I was on fire and I was like, I wasn't literally on fire. I was held up because I was on fire. Someone set me on fire. Somebody just walked by and set me on fire. So that really took 20 minutes out of my routine.
Knowing how our recording nights have been lately, nothing would surprise me at this point.
BRB on fire.
Just get a text. Hey, can't record tonight. I'm on fire.
I am a flame.
a selfie, and it's just I can't even make out your face. It's just flames.
Yeah. And so like I was ahead of schedule, and I was like, I'm going to have time to like sit there and read and do stuff and everything. Cause I've been trying to set aside time for the last 3 nights to read some more of this book, and it just hasn't happened. And like, I was vacuuming the house. It was the last thing I had to do. And then you texted me and I was like, damn it, Dustin, I'm coming. So yeah.
Fine. I'll let you go. Bye.
Get back to your cleaning.
Have fun.
Something I wanted to mention to you. I don't know. There was a thought I had when we were leaving the hospital. Tara mentioned like via text, and I saw it for myself when I got there. She goes, "Oh, they've stepped up security here." Like, and so I got there, and there's like a full blown metal detector in the lobby now.
Wow.
A security guard. Okay. Like a thing for you to put all like a bike by. It was like an airport.
Yeah.
And like they scanned and everything. And Tara was like, I guess things have gotten bad enough here. Like, like it's a children's hospital. So like there's like domestic situations and stuff that happen. And anyway, enough times there's been an incident here where there's like, all right, I guess we have to, scan people for weapons now.
Good Lord.
So we were leaving, and Tara's like, it's just like being in an airport, and we were walking to the car, and I was like, you know what, 20 years from now, like this will all be like, we'll have universal healthcare. Like this will all be free and everything, but there's going to be metal detectors like at every entrance. And you and I are going to you and I are going to leave here like with canes and go, remember back when we had to pay for all this, but you could just walk right in.
Right.
Like there wasn't a line or anything.
Everything's a trade-off.
Everything's a trade-off.
Everything's a trade-off.
Like, it's free, but God, it takes like an hour to even get in this place now. Because now everyone can just come here. And they have to check for weapons. Yeah. It's like Disney World, except your leg's broken.
The crappiest place on earth. I will say, if you're going to get shot or stabbed, no better place than in the waiting room of a hospital.
Sure.
You save a lot of money on ambulance.
Oh, yeah.
You're already there.
Yeah. Yeah, you sure do. You don't have to get airlifted or... That's expensive.
Right. You can literally just walk up to the counter and be like, "Hey, I'm so sorry to bother you. I have been shot."
Yeah.
And it does appear to be in my esophagus, and blood is pouring out.
Can you imagine, like, you're just walking down the street, you see someone and you're like, "Hey, oh fuck," and then that's someone who hates you. And they pull out a gun and then they shoot you, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm dying," and then you pass out. And you wake up and they're like, "Hey," you're like in a hospital bed and like everything hurts. And you're like, "Oh God." And they're like, "Hey, so we saved your life, but you lost like a lung, a kidney, and your liver's been kind of damaged. So you kind of, whatever, like you need dialysis, you can't drink alcohol anymore, all this stuff, and you're like, "Oh my God." And like, "Oh, by the way, we had to fly you here by helicopter. So here's a bill for $47,000. Like, why did you save me?
Okay, well, I can't pay this. Exactly. Just take the other lung, then, I guess. So you were shot,
but the bullet went right through your insurance card, so we couldn't run it. Couldn't make out the letters because on account of the bullet fragments. Went straight through your group number.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
We're just catching up in this episode if you guys haven't guessed.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have these long preambles and people are like, Jesus Christ, when are you going to talk about movies?
When are you going to talk about movies? This is called the movie hour.
Yeah. Well, if you read the title, then you'll see there's no fixed focus on this one. It's probably something like grouping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Something like that. My kids, I don't know if I told you this, my kids have like friends now. They have like neighbor friends.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Let's get a load of this.
Been a long time coming for
friends now. Well, I guess, what do you like my kid?
What are you, too good to just have friends be your parents?
Yeah. So like this family moved in on our street, and their kids are basically my big kids' age. And so they it's happened like toward the end of the summer. So like every day for like the last 3 weeks of summer, they would just come over here and grab my kids and, they'd disappear for the entire day. Just come back when they wanted to eat and, poop in my toilet and then leave. And it was great. And so that happens sometimes after school now or on the weekends or whatever. And so it's just weird. I was like hovering by this window, like, oh, okay. Like I'm looking out and they're just like playing in the yard, and I was like nervous and
Yeah.
I was like hovering and just kind of watching them. But it's interesting. It's nice because like these days it's less common for kids to like just sort of run out the door and go to a friend's house. Like you're used to, a lot of parents these days are used to having to drive them to places and supervise this play date and get to know this parent. And it's like, oh, I guess I got to spend all this time. And like, when they're like, yeah, we want to go to their house. And I was like, all right, well, I have to stay here. Like your brothers are here. I can't, they're too little to go play with that, And so, but it's interesting. So like, we actually have this like neat little opportunity because they're like 2 houses down from us that they can just walk over there. And we live on a cul-de-sac, so I'm not worried about like through traffic and everything. And it's just like, like this is nice. It's like a weird little slice of what our childhood was, which they're magically getting a little bit of now. Yeah, it's good. I know, right? Yeah, I remember like those days of you just leave the house, you come back when you're hungry, and other than that, you're just like out playing in the woods or doing something. And you just find stuff to do. And I always wonder about that. Like, obviously, a million things have been said about kids today having like iPads and whatnot. It's like, well, we had TVs, like we couldn't control it. So, but we had TVs. And so the thing then was always like, you're going to rot your brain if you sit there and just watch TV all the time. And it's like, well, we found a decent balance. Yeah. I feel like at least speaking for myself, we found a decent balance. It was, sometimes we're inside and we're watching TV and sometimes we're not. And it was like up to my parents to say, go outside, like you need to be outside now. Yeah. And yeah, right. Exactly. Like you've had enough screen time. Screen time was a thing back then too, in the 90s. It was just different, but you've had enough. Click it off, go outside, find something to do. And, you just go out there and you'd come back in 10 minutes later and be like, I'm bored. And you just have like a stick that you've been using as a sword for the past 10 minutes. And you're like, I guess I'm done now. I don't know what else to do. Right. And, but yeah, I wonder, like, do kids have that same, I hope they do. And I think they probably do more than we acknowledge, is like kids need that time to make up their own stories and have their own fun. Because if they're just consuming what other people say is fun all the time, then I think that's probably not good for our long-term imagination and storytelling and art. Because you have to have that time where your brain is forced to make up things. Yeah. Yeah. That's the only way you'll ever learn anything, is to make it up. Yeah, there's times where like, and my kids are varied in age, so it all is kind of different, but like sometimes they're just running around out here playing. And so I try to let them have that when they're doing it, because like it is important. Then there's times where like they'll just watch shows because they're eating breakfast or something, and then like they can't agree or something, they're not watching it, so I'll just like pause it or turn it off. And like I'll notice if I do that, then like they'll just grab a toy and they'll start doing like a hey, we're going to bake a cake, and they'll just pretend like they're doing stuff. And so it's like, okay, good. As long as we're fostering this a little bit. Right. But it sucks because like there's times where it's just like, I don't take those kids outside near as much as I want to or should, because I'm, because of the nature of my job, my wife's job, like there's a lot of times where it is just me or it's just her, like, so it's really hard to take 4 kids of such wide ages outside and have them all be entertained by just being in the yard, because my 2-year-old wants to ride this tricycle that he doesn't know how to ride. And then my 4-year-old wants to go and do it too. And then they want to go on swings, but they, my 2-year-old doesn't know that you can't walk in front of the swing unless you're going to get kicked in the face. They've all been kicked in the face at some point by someone on the swings. Yeah. And then my almost 10-year-old is bored because she's 10 and it's like, why fucking, what are we doing? Right. And it's just like, it's this whole thing. So I'm working on it. It kind of sucks, but like if I could wave a magic wand, it would be like, I would wish there was a way I could just sort of take you guys one at a time to have individual time outside, but for me to do that, I'd have to basically have them all each have their own weekend where they could just spend time with me one. And it's just like, oh, like, what are the rest of you supposed to do? And when am I supposed to eat? And when is laundry getting done? And when is food getting made? And, it's crazy.
It is. Well, it's not just about going outside though. Like, I feel like you can cut yourself some slack. Like, it's about giving.
Right now it's just too damn hot.
Well, this is true.
My son is like, Daddy, I want to go outside. I'm like, Oliver.
No. My son was outside for like, I don't even know how long. He was outside when I came home today, and we stayed outside for a little bit longer. And like, he came back in, he had like a couple of mosquito bites, and he was just like sweating on his head, on the top of his head. I'm like, yeah, this is too much. Yeah. But like, it's about like giving them opportunity to, create their own stories in their head. Like, there were plenty of times where I didn't go outside, but I went to my room and like, I don't know how old I was at this point. But like, you go to your room, shut the door, bring out your toys, and you just make up a story. Yeah. And act it out and like play every part. Which reminds me, I saw this video recently, and maybe you can confirm or deny this since you have both boys and girls. Mm-hmm. But I saw this video that was interesting, and it was that it was some study that had been done. I forget who did this study, like who hosted it, but it was a study of a couple hundred boys and girls. And what they did was they gave them action figures to play with, like toys. And they wanted to see if there was a fundamental difference in the way that girls played with toys and the way that boys played with toys. Mm-hmm. And what they found was that boys tended to, like, let's say it's a Batman figure, right? Like a boy would pick up the Batman figure and the boy would take on the personality of Batman. Right. Like he would start, I'm Batman, and Batman, like running around and like, throwing batarangs and whatever. He's like pretending he's Batman. And that for the most part, girls picked up that same Batman toy, and suddenly Batman became them. So the Batman is running around going, oh, we have to go get go grocery shopping. And it's like the Batman becomes them as opposed to the boys who became Batman. Yeah. And they found that most fundamental difference between boys and girls play is that boys tended to aspire to the characters they were playing with, and girls tended to infuse their personality into the characters they were playing with. Interesting. And I thought that was incredibly interesting. I don't know how true it is. I don't know. I mean, I just saw somebody talking about a study. I have not seen the study myself, but I thought that was an interesting observation regardless.
Yeah. So I got 3 boys, 7, 3.5, and almost 2. And then my daughter is almost 10. And so when she was, their ages, I mean, of course, when she was a toddler, like she played with toys a little bit, but Amelia, as soon as she learned how to read, which was very early, it was really all about books and songs and stuff. And then her pretend became much more about like pretending to sing or something, like pretending to perform. Sure. And stuff like that. Her entertainment's very internal. Mm-hmm. And then from the time Noah was 2, his was always kinetic and moving, and but Noah doesn't play with toys as much as he just, his imagination is all internal. He'll move around, he'll make noises, but it's a lot of it's, and some of it's just because he's a very neurodivergent kid. And so he's seeing a lot of stuff that you cannot observe him doing. Like he might be in space. He might be on some weird, like floating bridge thing. You don't know, because all he's doing is making swishing noises, and he's holding the same piece of a toy he always uses. But to him, that's like when I was a kid, I really loved like this coaster. Okay. This coaster, like, I would have played with this, would have been like my primary toy. Like there were times where it's like, I'm going to play with this figure. But if I were outside, like if I were on like the beach or something, all I needed was like this toy. And this was like my universal, like computer tool thing. This could do anything, and like, so I could do anything with this, and it worked anywhere. This would be the thing that would help me time travel or, read this foreign language or whatever. So Noah's got stuff like that. And so like my youngest 2 so far are somewhere in between. Like Oliver is probably going to be a big reader. But he likes to right now, a lot of what they do is they watch like children's shows and songs and stuff. And so they mostly play along with that or talk along with it. But when they play, it's just kind of moving around and jumpy.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. Like, I think that the ones who have played the most with toys might be my youngest two, but not that much. They mostly just like to move around. But like, as far as differences between boys and girls, like, yeah, I mean, all I've found is that boys tend to just want to move more.
Yeah, sure.
And there's just more of like some weird imperative to like, to go to,
sure, sure. Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I can attest to that. I mean, I'm thinking back to when I was that age and had a toy in my hand, and it was like, yeah, I was always moving with it. It wasn't like I was sitting in the floor, like, you know how you always like, people always in movies, they'll have like a kid sitting and like taking his toy and just kind of like moving it up and down and moving it slowly across the floor. Like, I'm walking. It was like, no. Part of that is the biggest toys I'd play with were like Sonic. So like I have him in my hand and like I'm running. Like, it was like, no. Like I still have, I'm literally staring at the toy that I played with when I was a child right now.
Really?
And it was, I think it was an early form of screenwriting in a way. I mean, it's improv screenwriting, but it was screenwriting that I was sitting there and going, okay, in this adventure, Sonic is this, right? Yeah. And you're just like coming up with it on the fly. Here it is. Here's what's happening. And it probably.
Hang on a second.
Yep.
Sorry, those same kids are screwing around right now in the corner bed.
Gotcha. But yeah, man, I definitely was the type that was imbuing those toys with a story. Like, I am those characters.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, my sample size is quite small because I'm just looking at myself, but that tracks for me. I don't know about, and the girls that I played with as a kid definitely did the other. Yeah. So like, again, small sample size, it's all anecdotal, but I feel like there's some truth to it, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It's just an interesting observation.
Yeah. I was kind of all over the place too, but as soon as like I had much more like visual reference for my imagination, like when I started watching like Dragon Ball Z or Toy Story, it's like that sort of changes the way you start to go. And after a while you're like, oh, it's kind of hard for me to like act out these things. It's much more fun for me to have like an avatar do it. So like you get action figures and you can make them flip because you can't flip, you know? But when you're younger, like you can just run and like run around. That's good enough. But once you're old enough to realize like, yeah, but I can't just like pretend I'm flipping. That's dumb.
Right.
I need to make something flip. Then you graduate to going into your room and playing with action figures and toys and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, so I remember this was, man, dude, I was way too old to be doing what I'm about to confess to doing. I received, for a birthday one year, a Fellowship of the Ring, action figure set. So it was like the full Fellowship. It was all the members. And so I had it just like sitting on my desk or whatever. And like took it out of the box. It's on the desk, all the characters. And one of my friends came over and we were so bored one day that we pulled out my video camera, which was still new. Like it was like a new thing and I was just trying to find some way to use it. And I pulled out the video camera, sat it up on a tripod facing my desk, and we did the thing. We did the like small movement of characters, to fit them in the frame, basically. Right. And we legitimately reenacted in a comedic way the entire trilogy of Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God.
On this thing. It was like 28 minutes long, one take, just completely off the cuff. The entire story.
Maybe not line for line, but like the gist of it, like, hey, Frodo, let's take the ring. Okay. Woo.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's no sets, there's no backdrops. It's against my desk. Yeah. Like that's it. And like, that's all it was. And it was so much fun. And I do not know what ever happened to that video. Like it is lost to the sands of time. But I remember like, I remember it being really funny and having so much fun with it and being like, we're going to rewatch this. We're going to show it to everybody because it's so funny. And like, we knew the lines like by heart. So we were able to, feed them back into our characters, but also in a comedic way and like, truncate or exaggerate the line readings. And like, it was so much fun. But that was the last time I remember actually playing with action figures.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that I'm literally surrounded by them right now,
sure, it's
like they're all just collectibles. But yeah, totally. Like Lord of the Rings had been out for a while. I don't know. I was probably 14, too old to be doing that. And so that would have been like what, freshman year of high school, maybe.
So, yeah.
And like, yeah, but it was so fun, but that's the last time I remember actually playing with an action figure. And, I don't know. It was fun, but
that's awesome.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, I did that way too late as well. But like, there's just times where it's just like I had I was either anxious or something. I don't know. But like, I was just like, I'm just going to go 5 minutes and just make that thing flip. I don't know. It's just, even now, like there are times where like I'm like stimming or something. And like, I'll be walking down my hallway and I'll just like find myself pretending to shoot a web.
Yeah.
And swing. And I'm like, what am I doing?
I don't physically do that, but I totally do that in my mind. And like, I think I've talked about this probably before on the podcast. Like I'll be walking or doing something and sometimes I'll like have a weird out of body kind of thing almost where I'm imagining what the shot looks like of me doing this. Yeah. Like from the perspective of a director who's shooting my life. It's such a weird thing to do, but like, I'll be walking and be like, oh yeah, this would be a steady cam shot. Like me walking through this right now, that'd be cool. And I'm like, why did I just do that? I'm such an idiot. Like that doesn't make any sense, but whatever.
Is that director Denis Villeneuve by any chance?
It's not, but it should be.
Well, speaking of kids and directors of lives, I wanted to transition and talk about Denis Villeneuve.
The hashtag DV.
Hashtag DV. DVD. Denis Villeneuve Day. DVD.
DVD.
I had Denis Villeneuve week. The first week where we couldn't record, you were working, and I was like, all right, what do I want to do? Because I don't have to like record or edit a podcast now this week, so I've got a little more time. This is before I was trying to cram in all that reading. Otherwise I would have done it then. But I was on Netflix and I noticed that two of his movies were on there. Prisoners was on there and Arrival was on there.
Oh, sweet.
Like,
okay.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna watch these two because it's been a little bit. Prisoners, it's been not too long, but my last watch of a couple of these wasn't too long ago. But I was like, I'm gonna watch Prisoners and Arrival, and I did, and I was like, wow, they're still both good. And so I was like, you know what? Where are the other ones? Damn it! So I found Sicario on MGM Plus. Didn't even know that was a thing.
I've never heard of that in my life.
And so yeah, that's where it is right now. And they're like, hey, you want a 1 week free trial? I was like, sure, buddy. And so I got a free trial of MGM Plus just so I could watch Sicario. Watch Sicario. And I was like, all right, so I'll probably stop. And I was like, you know what though? And so the other two are nowhere. And so I was like, all right. I watched Enemy and I got in. I saw Enemy. Where was Enemy? Enemy was on like Roku with like a Cinemax thing. Yeah. Yep. And so Roku was like, you want to try Cinemax for 7 days for free? I was like, sure, buddy.
Sure.
And so I watched Enemy and I canceled both of them after that. Yep. And then I went to the library and got Dune and Blade Runner 2049.
Sweet.
And I was like, screw it. I'm watching them all. So I watched like all of his recent movies. Like, everything before Prisoners is like obscure. So,
sure.
But when he started making movies that people might have heard, our listeners might have heard of, it starts with Enemy. And we talk about him all the time on the show, so I'm not really saying anything new, but he's pretty good.
He's very good.
He's excellent. He's one of my favorite directors working today. Similar to like Nolan or there's others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but like whenever I get asked like who's your favorite director, like what, I'm always just like I always will highly recommend Denis Villeneuve, and because from Enemy onward, basically every movie he's made is better than the last somehow. I like Arrival more than Sicario. I I probably like Arrival more than Blade Runner 2049.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And that's just a story thing. I think there were when I first watched Blade Runner 2049, and it's on this podcast, you can find it's on YouTube actually. You could find my initial review of that movie. It was like 5 years ago.
Sure.
You know, I didn't like it that much, and it grew on me because of all of the filmmaking aspects. But my initial critique of the story is fairly intact, which is that I'm sort of confused where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what we're doing. You know, I don't know who we're following. I don't know what the point of this story kind of is. It's more just, but to be fair to it, that's sort of what the first Blade Runner kind of was.
I was going to say, that's exactly what the first Blade Runner is.
The first Blade Runner is just kind of an experience, like a, not even a day in the life, but just like a quick little window into what life is like in this dystopian future. And so this is like, we're just taking the idea. I don't know. So anyway, I want to pick apart Blade Runner, but like my harsh critique of the Blade Runner movies is that there's not really that much story to them. It's like really cool world building and really cool story world and production design and vibes, but we're really lacking story and character, I think. But anyway, they do a pretty good job with 2049 with the story. And actually, I didn't realize that Hampton Fancher, the guy who wrote the screenplay for Blade Runner, he's like a co-writer on 2049. That's why Denis Villeneuve came on. He was like, oh, Hampton Fancher's going to co-write this? That's cool.
Sure.
Anyway, so. Yeah, but like I was watching all these and I was just like, yeah, like Denis Villeneuve is really great. And I noticed some interesting, I don't want to say patterns, because when you look at a director's oeuvre or whatever, you know, or you ask that director, like what draws you to, like, why do you make movies? Like Tim Burton, his movies are very clearly like, have certain influences, like, you know, like Gothic architecture and very extreme expressionistic visuals and maybe outcasted or isolated protagonists. Like that even works for Batman. It's like, well, that totally works for Batman. Yep. You know, Edward Scissorhands, all this. So that all makes sense for Tim, but it's very clear what kind of characters and aesthetics he's drawn to. Denis Villeneuve, I was thinking like, what kind of makes him tick? And so I started by thinking about like Prisoners, and I saw similarities between Sicario and Prisoners, films that were not made back to back, but are somewhat related. Sure. And that, you know, Sicario is about how the pursuit of justice or solutions or closure to end like a crisis. In the pursuit of that, we don't ourselves become corrupted in the interest of getting the job done. That's kind of what the Kate character sort of is existing to represent in those, and how, and how like, you know, a terrible situation like the war on drugs and the violent cartel, like created a situation where the only way to win is to essentially compromise your, you know, your morality or the morals of fair engagement, or even like breaking laws. Like it's, and with the full support of the US government, it's like deniability. It's like, oh geez, you know, like, but in Prisoners, the crisis is the girl's kidnapping, and, you know, it's Keller who's corrupted and his willingness to abduct and hurt, Alex. Yeah. And so I for the first time, I kind of saw that and I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I wonder like what his interest in this idea is. But then you've got like Arrival, which is not about that at all. It's a really great movie about how we should all just cooperate and communicate, and nuance is important, and verification is important, and social and global progress and stuff. And Enemy is a whole nother thing. Have you seen, sorry, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, one of the things that I love that a filmmaker does is when their films are varied. And that's not to say that like filmmakers who chase similar ideas are by default worse, right? Like, I'm not saying that Tim Burton, because he has a specific style that kind of permeates everything, makes him a bad director or whatever. Like, that's certainly his style. But I do find myself, just like with music, drawn more towards artists who are able to tackle a lot of different genres and a lot of different types of stories. And that to me is always more interesting.
James Mangold, that's another one. He does that.
Sure.
I was thinking about other directors and you said that, and I was like, that guy's done Kate and Leopold and
Walk the Line,
and Logan
to,
and Ford v Ferrari. Like that's a director who has range.
Right. And I always think for whatever reason, I lump Denis Villeneuve and Chris Nolan somewhat in similar camps, be that visually or just in terms of their clout, as like popcorn filmmakers, they tend to feel like they at least are trying to do something artistic.
Yeah.
And so for me, like I kind of lump them together, but I almost feel like, and this is a weird statement to say, but I do kind of feel like the thing that Denis Villeneuve has over on Christopher Nolan is a more varied filmography. And Christopher Nolan's films have over time become more increasingly interested in time as a concept. And the nonlinear structure has permeated a lot of what he's done. And so there's this weird obsession he has with time and retiming of events. And I've yet to see Oppenheimer, but it does feel to me like there's at least somewhat of a preoccupation. And you can look at obviously Memento being the prime example of, how time affects his film, but even like Batman Begins, which is a simple, superhero story, is told in a nonlinear way.
Yeah.
Or even Interstellar, which obviously plays with time as a concept, and Tenet, which plays with time as a concept.
Yeah.
It's very much, it feels like a preoccupation, or even Inception, right? Like time is a thing in Inception. There's a preoccupation with time for him, and that's not to say he's a bad filmmaker because of it. He's not. But it is to say that the variation of Denis Villeneuve's filmography, I think, gives him at least a little bit of a leg up, just because it feels like you're going to get something unique every time.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I'm not in any way knocking Christopher Nolan. But I just feel like Denis' work stands out for that reason. And all of those films you listed, I love those films. I think they're great films. Prisoners I watched pretty recently, and it's just it's a powerhouse of a movie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies where I think my snarky review at the time was like, this is the closest we'll ever get to a Denis Villeneuve Batman story, which is only because Paul Dano is Riddler, and it's about a guy interrogating a Riddler, and trying to get the truth. But it's such a good mystery story, and it's tense and it's taut and it's frightening, and that to me is exactly what a good Batman story should be. It's exactly what a good story in that genre should be. And it's like Denis Villeneuve is able to take whatever genre it is he's working in, be it something more grounded, like a grounded thriller like that, or some, sci-fi fantasy, like high fantasy like Dune, or a sci-fi whatever you want to call Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Like he's able to completely tap into what makes those stories tick and deliver it in its purest form. Everything you said about Blade Runner is totally true of the first Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And it would have been way easier to just do Blade Runner differently. This time, like, sensibilities have changed. Let's do something different.
Yeah.
And he both did and didn't at the same time.
Right.
Change Blade Runner. And you get that same feeling when you watch 2049 as you did with the first one, where it's like, this kind of feels empty, but in a weirdly mesmerizing way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that he's able to do that effectively. But yeah, I've got a lot of respect for him, and I'm definitely tuned into whatever it is he does next.
Enemy. Did you ever see Enemy? The one.
Enemy is the one I have not seen.
Enemy is very interesting because it's. I can't really go into it if you haven't seen it, because you should see it. But Enemy is one of those things where, like, it's one of the most brilliant things I can think of. It's very well constructed, and once you watch it multiple times, you kind of understand how well constructed it is.
Sure.
But because the first time I didn't pick up on what it was doing, I was very much face valuing that film. Mm-hmm. But once you sort of understand what's going on, and like this time I watched it and like I was reading an explainer alongside it. And I was realizing how symbolic and airtight that movie is.
Sure.
And it's allegory. But it's very well done. And it's one of those films, like once you watch it and you digest like the plot, then you start going back and you start seeing people's performances differently. You go, oh, that's because that's why, that strange look is now like, oh no, that makes sense now. So I like movies like that, and that takes good direction for that to happen. The same thing, to speak of Chris Nolan, The Prestige does that. Once you realize what that is, then you're like, oh, this is it. It all makes sense, and it makes
another film which plays with time.
Yes, but a great film, his best. I still
totally
think.
I agree. Best film.
Yeah, but it was nice to watch Blade Runner and Dune like on actual physical disc and get to, not have to worry about, because I paused Enemy for something to go pee or something. I came back and like the first few minutes back, like MGM was buffering or something. And so it was just like, and it's a very like muted color tone of a film. And so like there were times where I was like, shit, like I can't see Jake Gyllenhaal because I just see a bunch of like peach colored pixels. I'm like, where are you?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Where are you?
Anyway, but this is like the third time I've seen Dune, and I was just like, oh, it's just so great. And what Blade Runner and Dune both do really, really well, as compared to the others. Like the others are and Arrival is a little bit like this too. I'd put that in this camp of Prisoners and Sicario. No, those are all pretty distinctly different, but Arrival is like an upper midpoint to what Blade Runner and Dune are, which is just like this huge, like symphony of really distinct and ever-present music. Like the score is very heavy in those two movies, and the production design is insane in both of those films as well. Like you're watching them and you're just like, wow. Yep. Like this is great. And the sound design is very distinct and present there.
Sure.
Anyway, it's just, so all this to say, I just, if I have not like been beating the drum of Denis Villeneuve enough for people, I'm telling you.
Here it is again. Yeah.
Here it is. It's go watch those movies. Just those 5 movies, 6 movies?
Yep.
6 movies. But yeah, I mean, go. I mean, and watch them in order. Like watch, and Enemy and Prisoners were the same year, but I get the feeling Enemy was made first just because of Jake Gyllenhaal's beard and not beard. And I think there's more effect shots in that movie than in Prisoners. And so I'm just going to go on a limb and say Enemy was probably made first. So watch Enemy, Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune. Just they get better with each watch. They get better as they go along, and as he gets better. And I love Denis Villeneuve.
Agreed.
What did we say? Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. Everyone.
Villeneuve.
Anyway, that'll be this episode. Denis Villeneuve. All right.
Denis Villeneuve.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it. That's it. We'll have more episodes later. It's weird. Like we got all the way to this one and we were finishing all the content blitz and it was like, oh, cool. Like and then we took 2 weeks off and I was like, oh, I don't have anything in the can. Like I don't have anything. That's it.
Yep.
All right. Okay, everybody. Cheers.
Peace out.